you can hear me. Okay.
It is. Yeah, I'm
We
waiting.
have begun. We have
So I
begun.
think
I
it's
see the
okay.
live stream. Yes.
Okay, we can continue now.
Okay, so for our viewers, the topic is nihilism, and we are looking at three philosophers and their works. That is Friedrich Nietzsche, that is Soren Kierkegaard, and last but not least, Albert Camus. And we were talking about Friedrich Nietzsche and his method of overcoming nihilism, and he proposes active nihilism, which basically says destroy all values and create new ones. And through the Übermensch or the overman creates personal meaning through sheer will. So Nietzsche's self-creation is more personal, and it doesn't have to reflect the external world. And his most one thing I love about his works is the concept of amor fati. In Latin, it's Latin, and in English we translate it to embrace fate, or the love of fate and life's suffering. So I would like to put it to you guys, and let's look at the overman. Let's look at this destruction of old values and creation of new ones. So how do we do this in the contemporary age, or in the time that we find ourselves in? Do we see the concept of the overman being practical in these contemporary times? I would like to hear your views. So over to you guys. Anyone who's feel free to start, you can start.
Okay. Maybe if I can just start. I'd say that personally, how I come to maybe to my own understanding of what nihilism is and how relevant it is as an atheist. Yes, to me, take it as how I understand it. It is, the concept that we don't have any objective meaning, any objective truth. We don't have we don't have any inherent values. So everything else we know is only made up and it doesn't matter. So yeah, that's the simplest way I can define nihilism. Now, and also that is actually a broad definition, because as you can see, I've actually included the things about views, purpose, truth, values. So that already shows you that nihilism in itself is a broad philosophical point of view. For instance, we can talk about moral nihilism as well. So this is that we don't have any objective morals. Like, all the morals we have are just man-made. These are just human inventions. So that's one aspect. And as an atheist, it doesn't really matter that I should identify myself as a nihilist, but there are some of those values we borrow even subconsciously, because that's the same thing that someone like Friedrich Nietzsche, he talked about the overman. To how I understand the overman, Nietzsche was is also one of my favorite philosophers out there. And most of the time he's actually mistaken to be a nihilist, but he's actually not a nihilist. But he actually understood that it's a concept out there. To him, it was something that he actually pointed it out, just as I think Nick had talked about it. He actually pointed it out. But in his book called The Gay Science, he says that God is dead and we have killed our God. So what do we do? So and in that reading, you'll come to realize that he was talking about, when he talked about God, those are Western values, religious values, Platonic values, those things that they're hard mentality, like we have some divine laws and all that. So once that set of values breaks down, and even you will come to appreciate as an atheist in your journey, the moment you realize that religion is a lie. Something actually happens inside of you. And this is something that actually Friedrich Nietzsche echoed the same. So when he talked about God is dead, so what do we do? So once we've killed all our God, or we've lost those religious values because we found them, they are a lie, or they are made up, right? Something happens in us, and we come face to face with nihilism. um that is something that you cannot run away from. It's out there, it's staring at you, so yes, you have lost all your values. So what next? Nothing matters anymore. You don't have any objective values, meaning and all that. So he talked about the overman. Now when he talked about the overman, this is someone who has realized that, yes, in as much as we don't have any objective values, because I've shared my religious values or my religious life, it doesn't mean that I cannot create my own superior values that I can work with, to overcome this nihilism. And that's why we get the concept of the overman. So yeah, and I think that's still in tandem with what Nick had talked about, and how relevant it is as an atheist. Because yes, once you realize that, there is no God, it doesn't really mean that you must despair to, you should kill yourself because no one is taking care of you, so you don't have anyone superior to who should maybe give you your daily bread and all that. You actually are smart enough to know that you can actually create your own sets of value. You can actually create them, because yes, they don't exist. You know for a fact that nothing matters. But yes, you have realized that fact. You can't run away from that fact. It's out there. It's actually there. Yes, nothing matters. But you in yourself, you can create something in yourself that matters, that you can work towards it, despite nihilism. So yeah, so that's all I can say about it. How relevant it is as an atheist. Yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Dorcas, I would like you to go next, but I'd like you to focus on this destruction of all values. Luceveli has talked about self-creation, but I would like you to, let's say, talk about the destruction of values, and not necessarily as how it relates to us as an atheist, but in general sense of view, from the beliefs of human beings. Let's talk about the mundane beliefs that we have, and how we destroy them in a view of self-creation afterwards. Dorcas, over to you.
Kindly, Nikki, I noted that Morioki raised his hand before me, and because he's a man of few words, let him go first, and then I can answer the question.
Okay, Dorcas, I didn't see it. Thanks for the reminder. So Morioki, go next.
Okay, thanks, Dorcas. Nikki, I want to ask a question.
Yes.
When you say
Sorry, I can't hear you.
And creating new ones. Give me an example. Destroying all value. Give an example.
Yeah.
You can destroy a value and create a new one. Just can you give an example of that? Yeah. Give me an example of that.
I wanted Dorcas to tackle it further, but let me just give you let's say a simple example. Let's say you love let's say a specific brand of phones, of a phone, and let's say you interact with a different kind of a different kind of brand. And let's say you have conflicting reactions on how you perceive the way let's say you find that the more recent one is better, much better, and it forces you to change, maybe, or maybe forces you to want to change to something better, or maybe something worse. We don't know. So let Dorcas let's say handle it, and then say maybe you can see it from her point of view.
Okay.
So thanks.
Hey, that's a loaded question. I don't even know whether 5 minutes is sufficient to answer that question. I think
If I could If I could help you, Dorcas, yeah? Let me just give you a train to follow, yeah? So do this, yeah? I just need you to look at it, forget about the self-creation. Let's look at values. Let's look at how old values are embedded deep, let's say in our psyche, and how we can begin destroying them. Yeah, let's start from there.
Okay. Now, I'm going to answer that question shortly. I just needed to clarify my understanding of nihilism and even what it causes, like what the impact of nihilism is. Then I'll answer your question. So I'll do that in 1 minute, hopefully. Pray for me. Nihilism is the rejection of values and valuations placed on objects, people, or life. That's the dictionary definition. And instead, it states that everything is meaningless. A nihilist believes that everything is meaningless. So this question that Morioki was asking, and even what Nikki has tossed to me, that how do you replace those old values with new ones, that's beyond nihilism. Nihilism stops at that place where you say everything is meaningless. When you assign new values to yourself, then you go into other philosophical perspectives like existentialism, like faith, that is Soren Kierkegaard. I know I'm mispronouncing these names. Or have I said existentialism? Absurdism, yeah, or absurdism. So once you go past the meaninglessness and you assign new values, then you're getting into another philosophy. We must acknowledge that nihilism stops there, that everything is meaningless. Point blank, full stop. And as Luchaveleli alluded, nihilism has many variants. It can be political nihilism, it can be moral nihilism, it can be existential nihilism. And I think this is what we are focusing on by choosing those three philosophers. What is the impact of nihilism as it is without you adding bonus philosophies onto it? I think nihilism can make you despair, it can make you hopeless and depressed, because if something is meaningless, then you stop doing it. If life is meaningless, then you stop living it. That is why many nihilists contemplate suicide, because they're like, what is the point? I'm not saying all nihilists commit suicide or are suicidal, but there's a very strong correlation between the two. When an activity is meaningless, it tends to breed hopelessness, depression, and despair. You also lack motivation or apathy when you feel like nothing really has value. There's nothing significant about anything that you do. You won't be motivated to act. Yeah. Additionally, it can trigger an existential crisis. I think Luchaveleli said this. It can make you indifferent towards anything. You might not even want to help people. Like you see your neighbor is struggling, or you see somebody needs assistance, maybe they're being robbed and they're calling for your help. You'll be indifferent, you'll be apathetic, because you think everything is meaningless. It's meaningless to help. It's meaningless not to help. So you just you just let things be. You are a passive observer, and that is the passive nihilist. I think Luchaveleli was the one who alluded to the distinction between passive and active nihilist. And it can also cause disruption, social disruption, when it comes to the moral nihilism. However, it can also be positive in that you reevaluate your values. It causes you to think. You don't just accept the status quo, and it also can make you accept the impermanence of life. Nihilism, that is. Now, to answer the moderator's question, singular form, old values versus new values. I think I empathize with some aspects of nihilism and disagree with others, right? That's why I don't even, some people even take ownership of the title existentialist. I'm not an existentialist because to be an existentialist, you have to be a nihilist first, and I'm not one. But I do agree that they have a point to some of the arguments. So by you rejecting certain values, there are many values in society that are redundant, that don't have any utility or rationality, but we just accept them because that's how things are done. And here I'm thinking of maybe something like homophobia. Of course, for us as atheists, something like religion, that there's value in being spiritual or religious. We reject that idea. But we also reject some of us. There are some of you who are traditional, but I personally am a gay ally. So I reject the idea that gay people are sinful or defective in some way. And I would replace that with a new value, which would be tolerance, accepting that being gay is just a different sexual orientation, or the other one of religion, that you rejecting God or the God claim, you replace that with rationality, with scientific methods and skepticism. That would be the new value that I would think of. So those are the two examples I would give. There's so much more I could say. There's so much I could talk about that metaphor of the madman and how the phrase God is dead came to be. But I think my time is up and we don't want this to be a monologue. Thank you.
Okay, Dorcas, thank you so much. Lucheville, I can see your hand up. But let me pivot to Muriuki first. And while I'm pivoting to Muriuki, Lucheville, I'd like you, with I know you have a response, but I'd like you to also look at the concept of amor fati, the embrace, the love of fate, a life suffering. Does this environment of chaos breed a fertile ground for self-creation? Luchevelele, why don't you think on it while Muruki gives us a response? Yes, Muruki, you can go. You can go ahead.
Yes. Nikki, Douglas, can you hear me?
No, Morioki, your internet is fluctuating. I think you need to move to a better location.
Yeah. Can just and
okay, well,
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No, it's still you're still buffering, I guess. Let's maybe wait until it's stable.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Luchevelele can go ahead.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Nick. Okay, so before I start to respond to your question, let me first share my points on again, and also to respond on some of the things that Dorcas had talked about. Because yes, we actually acknowledge that we actually have boundaries between nihilism and other philosophical viewpoints like existentialism and others. And this is something interesting about philosophy as a whole, and even interesting about these philosophers that we are talking about, you see, philosophy is like a box of chocolate. It's like, a box of chocolate actually has chocolates of very many flavors. We have white chocolate, we have vanilla, and so on and so on. So as you pick, you can't say that since you're a fan of vanilla chocolate, when you're given a box of chocolate, you will only eat the vanilla chocolate and leave others. No, you will eat the whole box. And that's the interesting thing about philosophy. So it's like a pick and choose game. The ones that make sense to you, you pick and choose. And that's the interesting bit. And I talked about how even we do that at a subconscious level, even as atheists, because yeah, you might not really identify as a nihilist, but you actually had to subconsciously understand what moral nihilism is for you to know that gay people are not bad people. So you discredited that viewpoint, that value. It doesn't matter. When you interact with them, it's how they treat you and how you treat them. So you don't have that preconception or those old values that you are raised with. Yeah. So at that realization, you still apply concepts of moral nihilism for you to, and then as you do that, you create your own sets of values. Now, as you wiped away, as you realize that gay people are not bad people, you say that they can be your friends. So that's a new value that you're creating for yourself, which now you can follow. You are again subconsciously an existentialist because that's what existentialism is. So, and most of the time you don't do that even consciously. You don't tell yourself that, okay, in as much as I'm not a nihilist, let me borrow that concept to apply it. That's the logic about critical thinking. It doesn't really operate on such boundaries. If something is logical, it will be logical. Trust me. So it doesn't matter whatever philosophy you apply, but the fact is you borrowed some of those concepts to be what you are, or to hold the new values that you're holding right now. And just as I've responded to that, and I can also talk now about this is also something which, in as much as even Friedrich Nietzsche, just as I've said, you see, he personally, he's not a nihilist, but as an existentialist, because he's an existentialist, or he was an existentialist, he talked about nihilism in detail and even warned, even cautioned about nihilism. And part of the way he cautioned, some of them I agree with, some of them I don't agree with, but yeah, that's what he said. And one of the ways he cautioned about succumbing to, nihilism, because if you don't create your new values after you've killed your gods, you've killed your old system, and you're stuck there. You haven't created, you haven't pushed yourself further to become an existentialist. You're dormant there. So you don't have any sets of values to operate with. You're right there. And this is how you can succumb to things like, existential crisis, things like depression sometimes, things like, hedonism. These are overindulgence. They indulge in us excessively. You see, so this is actually a place of no progress at all. You succumb to it, but he cautions against that. That's why he brings in the concept of the overman. You must create your own sets of new values to operate with, to become a superior man. So that's what the overman is: a superior man, superior than what you were before. So that's an interesting thing. You see, as an existentialist, he still talked about nihilism because he saw it right there. But himself, he wasn't a nihilist. Now, to some of the concept, which brings me back to Nick's question, how I will respond to things like love of fate or love of suffering, if truly it actually brings out the better in a person, as the concept of the overman. This is actually things I will consider, or I will call them Nietzschean solutions. And again, I will play a pick and choose game, but I won't take it as a whole. I take it with a grain of salt, because it really makes sense. Even in some of the scientific concepts, it indirectly borrows some of those ideas. Like, look at things like how our immunity becomes stronger. You have first to interact with many infections at some point in your life for you to develop immunity, and that's how you become stronger. So in what Nietzsche was talking about indirectly, it was that, if you undergo suffering, it has an ability to transform you, to be something resilient, something better. And yes, to some extent it works, but not always, because we know for a fact, some people, if you experience someone, if even not someone, most people, if they undergo things like, trauma, things that give them hardship, they won't progress in life, they won't progress in education, they will just be a crisis to everyone. But if you put someone a place where they can thrive and be themselves, they can actually do wonders to society. So as you can see, we can't really take those things that I consider Nietzschean solution everywhere and apply them everywhere. So you only pick to the places they apply. And something dangerous about this is that you can even you can bring your child and make them undergo through hardship, and you think that you're making them better, but all you're doing is just weakening them. It can work the other way. So I can say that in some of this concept, like that amor fati, you just take it with a grain of salt and only apply it where it's relevant or where you can see that it can actually work, but don't take it, like it's your role in life. Again, just pick and choose for you to be, for just directed towards your goals or what you want in life. That's all I can say.
Thanks, Luce Vileli, for that. Chilo, if I can see your hand up. I'll give you the chance to comment, then we'll go back to Miruki for anything that we would have missed. Chilo, if you can go ahead.
Yes, hi. I just got home and I just joined the meeting, so I wanted to know what the questions were.
Okay, just as a reminder, we're talking about nihilism, and our focus currently is Friedrich Nietzsche's work. We're looking at how his solutions. We are looking at his solutions, to nihilism, on how we can actively confront nihilism. And his main points are the destruction of all values to create new ones through sheer will. He has a concept of an overman, a bridge, which creates personal meaning. And we have the concept of amor fati, embracing fate, love of fate, and life's suffering. With that, I guess you can look at Nietzsche's works if you have access to them. We are currently there. Muriuki, anything? Muriuki, I think you should fix your network is still not stable.
I'm still breaking.
Yeah, you're breaking up. Let's go back to Chillwave while you fix it.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that I really believe his take on nihilism. I mean, I don't actually believe in nihilism because I think, objectively speaking, the purpose of life is survival and replication from a biological standpoint. So life isn't inherently meaningless. If we're talking about subjective meaning, I would subscribe to existentialism. I think it was either Soren Kierkegaard or who's the other guy? Is it Jean-Jacques Rousseau or the other guy? John Paul Sartre,
Nietzsche.
one of the two, who are existential philosophers. So I think existentialism is the only way, or rather the best way to combat subjective nihilism. And I just had a quick question for Dr. Lucia Velelli. I managed to hear a little bit of what he said, not all of it, but I just wanted to ask, by any chance, would you be able to clarify the difference between moral anti-realism, moral subjectivity, and what was the other one? Moral nihilism. Yeah, those three. You didn't talk about all three, but I was just wondering if you could clarify, or anyone. It doesn't have to be him. That's an open question to anyone. So yeah, those are my questions.
Chilwev, great question. And actually, coincidentally, we're actually about to cover what your questions are based on. So I'd like you just to hold on for a bit. Let's hear Ndeve's comment, and then we'll continue to Soren, because I think your questions your questions imply I would say the rising of Soren Kierkegaard. So just hold on for a bit, let Ndeve comment, and then we'll move on.
Thanks, Nikki. I know I'm wading into philosophy here, a place that probably I don't belong. But from what I could just gather of what our life is, and let us think about what you cannot unsee. So once we started thinking about life, about the Big Bang, or the chances of the universe ever being there, when we discover these things around the nature around us and our life and the purpose of our life and what happens in life, my question is, how can we not have a little bit of nihilism? I am just, or even absurdism. I would like somebody to explain to me how we can't have that. I'm not talking about suicide or somebody thinking like absolutely the life is useless, but how can we not have a thought of this is absurd? What is this all about? So that's a question I'm asking the philosophers to please explain to me. Thank you.
I think Dorcas is I'll give Dorcas a chance. Yet I know she's not a philosopher, but I'll just give her a chance first, and then we'll let the philosophers handle it. I am a philosopher, but due to me being the moderator, my approach is limited. I won't want to be biased. So Dorcas, maybe go ahead, and then maybe I'll let Luceveleli comment.
Okay. So there are two questions that came from the floor, and there was also one question that came from the moderator. I want to start with that one, and hopefully within the next 5 minutes, if there'll be time for the others, I'll try and tackle the other two. And who are you to say I'm not a philosopher? Excuse me, I'm a philosopher. I'm a skeptic. I am a critical thinker. I'm a philosopher. I'm a humanist. I'm a woman of many hats. Please don't confine me to your narrow understanding.
No, we are not. We are rejecting old values and creating new ones.
Yeah. So you had talked about an aspect Friedrich Nietzsche put forward, which is it's a German phrase. What did you call it? It means love of suffering.
Amor fati is Latin, actually. Amor fati.
Oh, Latin.
It's Latin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aha. Amor fati. So I believe Nietzsche came up with that concept because he suffered from a very disturbing illness for a long portion of his life. In fact, there was no medical solution to his problem, and he had to spend a lot of time in isolation. That caused him to think about existential issues. And this is where now he came up with his philosophy. So he was somebody who was suffering. He had a physical illness that gave him agonizing pain. And he had to find meaning somehow in that suffering. And I believe that is why he came up with this concept. In fact, he was saying that life requires some sort of suffering for it to gain meaning. For you to appreciate something, you've got to have friction. You know, take the example of a story. Maybe you're watching a movie, and in the movie, the protagonist, the hero, is is on a quest. He's looking for his Miss Right, and fortunately, he stumbles on her. Maybe on day one of his quest, they get married, they have kids, they have no struggle. There's just no friction in his life. Boring story. Life wouldn't be worth living if it was smooth all the way. But if this protagonist has some struggles, he's suffering here and there, then he's forced to create a better version of himself. Yeah, you become self-actualized when you undergo suffering. So that is the background behind Amor Fati by Nietzsche. This is stemming from his personal experience. Second question was from Chilwell, who was asking the distinction between moral anti-realism, moral nihilism, and what was the third one, Chilwell? Oh, he has logged out. I think he has logged out. I think I can't remember the third one, but what I know
moral
is
relativity.
Oh, okay. Moral relativity. Yes. So moral nihilism and please correct me, Richard, because I know you are one. You and Kwesi, whatever his real name is, the Ghanaian. You two are our resident moral nihilists. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding of moral nihilism is that there are no universal moral values. Should I say universal? I think it's the rejection of moral values. It's the rejection of moral values, moral nihilism. That's my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Then moral anti-realism is the position that there are no objective moral facts. Yeah, that there are no objective moral facts. And then moral relativism is the acknowledgement that morals depend on individuals or culture. That is the understanding I have of those three. And the last question was from Debe, who was asking how can we not have nihilism? Was that the question? How can we not have nihilism, or did you
Yes,
confine it?
yes, it was.
Okay.
How in this life can we not have a little bit of nihilism with everything going on? I guess that was the question.
Aha. Yes. I hear you, Ndebe, and I echo some of Luchabeleli's sentiments. I think there's a little bit of us in each one of these philosophical ideas. The way I love that analogy of the chocolate. And I think Chilwell made a joke on the chat that if philosophy is a box of chocolate, what if you have diabetes? So you get yourself some insulin if you do. But I think there are some aspects of nihilism that ring true for most of us. For instance, the distrust of institutions. We are seeing that with our Gen Zs at the moment. They are questioning political ideas, the old guard. They are questioning the church, the role of religion in society. They are challenging all these things. And they're saying that those values are not working for us. They're not set in stone, and we don't have to abide by them. Now, where I draw the line is when The nihilist now says everything is meaningless. Everything is meaningless. I kind of diverge. Even the idea of truth, we had a very bitter debate, you and I, Luchaveleli, when we were having this Zoom topic of truth. When we talked about truth, we were debating whether objective truth exists. And I am of the opinion that objective truths exist. Truth cannot be subjective. If it's subjective, then it's not truth. That's a belief or an opinion. But I don't want us to go into that rabbit hole because we will veer off topic. So there are things I disagree with in nihilism that make me averse to taking on that title of being a nihilist. But of course, there are other things that I agree with. Rejecting some values here and there, some political ideas, some moral ideas here and there. Yes, I definitely reject them. But then there are other things which I think I agree with society on. So that's my position. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dorcas. Very quickly, Mwana Falsafa, if you could comment, or maybe if you have a question.
Oh, I think good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. All of us can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Well, my point is that it seems I've almost been answered by Dorcas anyway, but my point is the objectivity versus the subjectivity of the question of meaning. If there's no fundamental, objectivity, if there's no objectivity in all that, if there's no big meaning, that we are all supposed somehow, like you've said, the you don't just believe in the subjectivity of everything. There's a way everything's supposed to be done. So if there's an objective meaning that somehow unites all of us, of course, if you believe in that, you want to be a nihilist. But if the world is subjective, and I don't believe, I'm not very sure whether Nietzsche believed in objectivity, whether it's in ethics or in somehow in a wider range. So my point is that as long as you reject, somehow there's no objectivity, there's no fundamental meaning that unites us. Like when it comes to religious people, there's the idea of God. So God dictates all. God is the authority in that field. So as long as you reject any objectivity, I believe that somehow the default position, whether you are an existentialist, whether you are a pragmatist, whether you are what, I believe that the first thing is that you are a nihilist. That's the first thing. After that, you create your meaning. And even by creating your meaning, should we believe, teleologically speaking, as in, should we value something that is temporal, something that is just going to end? Like when your meaning is just to achieve happiness, and with your death, that's your end. So should we say that by your happiness ending, is there any way in which it is fundamental? It's just something. And how sure are we that this our life is just, it's not an illusion somehow? If meaning is just being created by Dorcas having her own meaning, the same way in Deve, the same way or Mwana Falsafa here. So my point is that as long as there's no objectivity, there's no meaning there's no fundamental meaning, and this now comes to, I don't know how to exclude the theory of knowledge from this epistemology. So as long as there's no somehow a bigger umbrella, I feel that somehow the default position is being a nihilist. And after that, you create your meaning, but somehow the meaning is just yours. There's no way it is fundamentally his. Thank you.
Thank you, Mwana Falsafa, for that comment. If I may comment, I would say this, judging by the response of everyone, I'd like to give you guys an analogy, and it comes from quantum mechanics, surprisingly. There's something called spooky action. and it means that two random objects which maybe are interacting with each other, and we cannot know the position of either of them until we measure the position of one. And whilst we measure the position of one, then we come to know of the other's position. And it basically says that the actions of a particular object A, I would say directly influences the actions of let's say a particle B. And this is only possible if we can measure either particle A or B. So this, what am I saying? On the question of subjective truths and objective truths, truth is only known when it can be confirmed or it can have justification. So anything can be in the I would say we could anything can be truthful or can be false, but for us to know, then we have to justify it. And judging by the responses that everyone is making, I would say that actually the way I planned this discussion to go is exactly how it is, because everyone is talking about what I can let's say sense from everyone's arguments is we are going down to now despair, and we are looking at Soren Kierkegaard's diagnosis of nihilism, and which he looks at it as nihilism or existential despair arises from detachment from God or external truth. He goes on to say that rationalism fuels nihilism. So basically, Soren is trying to tell us that for in our efforts of investigating the absurdity or the meaning in life, this action itself fuels nihilism. And his view is meaning is found in passionate personal faith, not reason. So Soren Kierkegaard's approach to nihilism is on subjective truth, is through subjective truth and the denial of rationalism. And he goes on to introduce an idea of leap of faith, where we have to embrace the absurd so that it could transcend despair. And how do we do that? Through three stages. And one, he says, we move from aesthetic pleasure. Basically, he's saying we should move from things like order, beauty, or maybe the things that we look at as order, beauty, rhythm. We also move to ethical duty. Do we have ethical duties? Do we look at moralism? Do we have a moral reflection on our nihilism or meaning to what our morals and values dictate in our lives? And thirdly, he begs us to have religious faith or embrace religious existence. So Soren is basically telling us that we should go back to God so that we could cure our nihilism. So I would like to get responses. And I would like us to start from how rationalism fuels nihilism. Thank you. Floor is open to anyone, but I would like to start with Murioki, because he's the one who's had the least interaction.
Can you hear me now, Nikki? Make clear.
Yes, Miruki?
Am I clear now? I'm
Yes,
clear.
you are. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, okay, I just wanted to ask Tokas a question. Since mortality is not guaranteed, like you can die at any time, does that make life meaningless? Because our mortality isn't guaranteed. You can die tomorrow, next week. So you can plan for something, but you won't be sure that you'll be here next week. So does that make life meaningless? Thanks. I'm done.
Nikki, are you there? Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Dorcas, I'm here.
Okay.
So
That was my
I
question.
would like, sorry?
That was my question to Dorcas.
Yeah, so I would like to save Dorcas the air because we could be derailing from what we're going on to next. So to answer Muruki's question, yes, the question about mortality always breeds meaninglessness. It's a no-brainer, Muruki, really. If you look at different cultures of the world, religions, philosophies, political standing, everyone is has death on the back of their minds, and they always resort to thoughts of meaninglessness. So yeah, so going forward, I would like us to go on to Soren Kierkegaard and his how rationalism fuels nihilism. The second question would be how faith overcomes nihilism. So let's start with rationalism fueling nihilism, and what is faith's answer to nihilism. So over to you guys. Anyone could, the floor is open, so I'd like to give it to anyone to start first. Yeah, Chilwave, go. No, MJ, why don't you go first? And then Chilwave could follow, and then Luceveleli.
Hi everyone, hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
No, I just wanted to comment on something I just heard someone say. First of all, I'm very nihilistic about this conversation. I think philosophers and atheists have taken it a bit far, but because it's the nothingness, it's the what, it's the there's so much. There's a way. I believe life. I've said this before. Life is like a party. You can choose to look at it from the angle that is gonna be fun, or you can decide to look at it from the angle that, oh, when if I go for that party tonight, tomorrow that party will be over. Therefore, in the fullness of time, it's meaningless. So I think that's how you should look at life. So yeah, nihilism exists depending on which angle you look at life. But the difference between real life and my example is that you can choose to go to a party or not. But in life, you cannot choose not to show up in this life. You're already here. So the only thing you can do is to make best out of it. Or check out, because if you embrace nihilism, then nothing changes. So that's how I look at it. When you ask for cure for nihilism, it implies that the inherent implication in that question that nihilism need to be cured is a condition that exists. First of all, it's a mirage, it's a state of mind. There's nothing to be cured. You just need to look at life from a different angle than everybody else. So, just to sum it up, nihilism is a state of mind. It's not a reality per se. You can be nihilistic about past, you can be nihilistic about future. You can say you wish you were there when they were fighting for independence. You would have made a difference. or you wish you were there 1,000 years ago, you'd have made something different. Same says you can look in the future, says it won't matter in the next 200 years, so why does it matter? Why would I put any effort into it? The only problem with that kind of perspective in life is that it stops you from looking at now. And that's my point. It matters now. So life does not need, there's no cure for anything other than to look at the present, because that's all you have. Nothing is assured. The future is a gamble. The past, you can't do nothing about it.
Thank you, Maurice. On that, actually, what I wanted to find out was on Kierkegaard's faith or leap of faith. How does his faith seek to overcome nihilism? That's my question. I'm not necessarily talking about the cure of nihilism. I'm asking, through faith, how do we overcome nihilism?
Well, I'll briefly say faith is the what? Is the belief, it's the make believe. Eh? So you see, the reason why you faith might be quote unquote a cure or an escape, it's sort of an escape from a reality. The reality is this: life now is very valuable because we are all in it and we can make the best out of it. We have a chance that millions of potential people don't have. Fact number two, whatever we do with this life, in about 200, 300 years, it won't matter. It might matter in 100, even if we are dead, because you know our close relatives will remember, they'll come, take care of our grave, and hang our walls on the photos and say something. But remember, like I normally tell people, remember your grandfather, the great-great-grandfather, the one you remember most. Maybe you met your grandmother or your great-grandfather. Remember, even them had a great-grandfather who you have no idea about, who also had a life and thought life has meaning. So it's the same it will be for you. So you make those two things. So what faith does is remove this reality and bring in a mirage of eternity. Like this is a stepping stone to something bigger. And I understand why most people embrace that concept. Because I think the human mind is so powerful in the sense that I was thinking the other day why we go to the movies. It's just to escape from that reality. You go into a movie, you get yourself immersed. It's a fiction for 2 hours, but you actually feel like, you're part of this superhero or whatever the storyline is for the movie. It's an escape from reality for a few hours. Now, faith brings you an escape from this reality forever. It tells you there's nothing like that. We are waiting for. We are just having a stepping stone. It will matter after that. It will matter in 1,000,000 years. It will matter in 100,000 years. And it feels good. And I understand it. I don't condemn it. I understand why a human being maybe would want to live forever, would want to think the issue of justice. You don't want to believe that someone like the German guy can actually will never get punished and got away with all that kind of crime, or the colonialists, or the slave masters. You don't believe that there's no sense of justice that will have happened to that kind of crime. Now that faith brings you and tells you, no, it will be well, something will happen. It's the way, the future, the heaven, all those things. It gives you a mirage. It's understandable, but it's not true.
Okay. Thanks, Maurice. Chilwave, you're up, and then Luceveleli.
Finally, I'm sorry, Nikki. There is a
Yes.
sequence in which the
Okay.
hands were raised. It was
Okay.
Luceveleli first, and in fact, Chilwave had asked him a question before of the moral nihilism, moral anti-realism, etc. He hasn't even answered that one. So
Okay.
it's Luceveleli first, and then Morioki, then me, then Mwana Falsafa.
I understand, Dorcas, but I know
Also,
Luceveleli is going to. I know Luceveleli is going to go into a deep analysis. That's why I wanted to give Chilwave the name first, because even he hasn't spoken that much. and then I'll move on. Just don't worry,
Okay.
Dorcas, I got you.
Okay. One other thing, kindly
Yeah.
note that it is now 9:20.
I can see.
If you
I
could,
can see.
if you could limit people's talking time, if anybody goes beyond 5 minutes, you stop them so that we can cover all the topics.
And
Okay, I
if the
understand,
topic
Dorcas.
is much interesting, we can, after we move away, we can go back. Because
It's
they will
okay.
kick out.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Chilwave?
Yeah. So I think you had asked, how does rationalism lead to nihilism? To me, that's kind of a loaded question, because I don't believe that being rational leads to nihilism. Yeah, I think it's kind of the opposite. So, yeah, to me, nihilism is kind of dumb. I don't see why someone who's rational would believe that life has no meaning, whether objectively or subjectively. So, yeah, nihilism is a product of erroneous thinking in my book. That's what I wanted to say.
Actually, Chilwave, you're actually agreeing with Kierkegaard's analysis of nihilism, rationalism fueling nihilism. So I guess you see the same, you have the same insight as Kierkegaard. So let's pivot to Lecheveleli. Let's see what he has to say about it.
Actually, yeah. Actually, it was wise of you to let them speak, because first I had to respond to what important things were said, and then I can respond to your question, including this one here. But I'll be as fast as I can, and be as audible as you guys can get me.
Okay.
So
Okay. Luchevileli, just ignore any past questions about nature. I'd like you to focus on I know you have something on this. That's why I wanted you to, and I'd like you to do a deep analysis on Kierkegaard, more so on faith.
Okay. So this is just to be fast and brief as I can as well tie this, because it's very relevant to what Ndeve had asked. She had asked if we have, or why don't we have an element of absurdity in life? Because so, and this is where Kierkegaard comes in, because when you talk about the absurd, you see, this is the weirdness. You can call it weird, or the things that don't make sense. It's a conflict of the universe not having meaning versus your own drive to find meaning in a meaningless universe. I hope it makes sense. Like, you already know there is nihilism, but yet we have people who believe that they can find meaning or purpose in life. Yeah. So these are the existentialists coming in. So when you look at existentialism, which is slightly different from nihilism, because as the previous people had talked before, they say that for you to be an existentialist, you should first acknowledge the reality, or maybe the concept of nihilism, because that's the default, that's the starting point. So out of a broken universe, that's why you can create your own personal sense of meaning, even if it's meaningless to someone else, but it makes some relative meaning to you. And people have also talked about things of subjectivity here, relativity, objectivity, and all that. And this still ties into the issue of nihilism itself. So people like Kierkegaard, you can as well term them as religious existentialists. Yes, Kierkegaard acknowledges nihilism just as any logical person would. Like, yes, it's a concept, it's out there. If I don't have any values, it's out there. And this is how now he approaches the issue of the absurd. By what I had talked about, the absurd is it's actually a conflict, which never had asked about it. It's a conflict that, yes, there's no meaning, there's no inherent meaning in the universe. Whatever things you're doing, they're meaningless, because after you're dead, or after a few million years, like, how relevant is it? It's not relevant anyway, right? But despite having that, we have people trying to find their own personal sense of meaning. So that's absurd, right? But now, when a person like Kierkegaard acknowledges that, yes, we have the absurd, when you encounter the absurd, you have options. And the option he gave, or the solution he had, was a leap of faith. Like, okay, you should have religious faith to acknowledge that there's a divine, there's a divine being that's taking care of you, despite living in an absurd universe. So that's why he says that if you try to be too rational, because then you're being religious, you don't really need to have much common sense, right? That's why they fear rationalism. It actually makes sense. That's why the religious people, they are like sort of scared with people who want to seek knowledge, scared of scientists some of the time, like, because that's how religion works, and that's how a person like Kierkegaard will think. Because yes, too much rationality will make you to, if you are a know-it-all, if you work with logic, you step away from belief, things of faith. So you descend. The ultimate truth of that is nihilism. And it totally makes sense, because you can imagine if you are a curious mind and you're born and people are telling you the stories of creation, but you're curious to imagine we didn't have creation. We had something known as the Big Bang. There's evolution and all that. At the end of the day, you will know that we don't have a God out there who's taking care of you. So any religious sense or religious laws doesn't make sense. And that's what they are scared of. That's what Kierkegaard was cautioning against. He was saying that, if you're too rational, you will descend towards nihilism. And this is the point. This is even actually, even as atheists, we really misunderstood, because the religious person will tell you that, oh, so you're an atheist, so none of this makes sense, so you're a nihilist. And even if you're an atheist who doesn't subscribe to nihilism, you will still be judged the same way by the religious folk, but you can't blame them. That's how their logic works, and that's how Kierkegaard works. So he tries to give a solution by saying that, you can have religion, and you can't blame him. Just as I earlier said, he was an existentialist, right? And the existentialists create their own personal sense of meaning. And to him, he saw that, right, having God or having faith in God would actually make me stay away from nihilism. I won't descend towards that hole. I won't descend into despair. So he tries to give the solution. And I know someone like Albert Camus, he's to be talked about later, but this guy, however, gives a secular alternative. You can sort of think of him like a secular sort of existentialism, because absurdism is actually a variant of existentialism. He gives a solution, because he said that, yeah, once you've encountered the absurd, you've encountered that the universe, there is no inherent meaning in the universe, and there are people who are trying to find meaning, people who claim that they have meaning, people who even try to tell you that, at the end of the day, it's the living worthwhile is the end of the goal. For you, there's no happiness. The joy is finding happiness. Someone will tell you sort of things. Those are people who are, trying to stay away from the absurd. Those are consolations. So anytime you encounter the absurd, he gives a solution. And people have talked about suicide, and that's very well. This is what Albert Camus was talking about. He said that, yeah, you can decide to kill yourself. You can have an option of suicide, but he doesn't recommend that. He even said jokingly that you can either have a cup of coffee. I mean, you can either kill yourself or just have a cup of coffee. So
Okay.
it tries to give you a meaning. So I'm almost finishing. I'm sorry. I know I've taken too much time, but let me just come to an end. So he said, by the act of you killing yourself, you're only admitting that, yes, life is meaningless and you succumbed to it. You're actually acknowledging that life is meaningless. So he actually brings the concept of resist the absurd, embrace the absurd. I mean, resist the concept of nihilism, embrace the absurd, to carry on. So yeah, and we'll talk about him, I think, in the next thing, but that's all I can say about it.
Thank you, Lucevelele. You've gone a little more deeper. Actually, you've done my work, but it's okay. Muriuki, please, if you have anything to add.
And just I think what more is said for faith, if you believe you're going to a better place, and somebody in the sky is watching you, somebody who loves you in the sky watches you, and he loves you. Of course, that kills nihilism, because if you have a God who loves you, when you die, you'll go and meet him. So that destroys nihilism. Thanks.
Okay. Mwana Falsafa, in a minute, please. Or two. A minute or two.
Soren,
Yes, Soren.
So I think from that it's like that solution, the solution that Soren gives is like the Pascal's wager: believe in God, Believe in God. When you die, if you find that God is there, it will be positive. When you find that God is not there, again, it will still do no harm. I just find it's out of ignorance. I just like that the fact that rationality brings the reality. Whether nihilism is what we have, we just need to embrace our fate. And nihilism comes whereby, of course, not a bad term. I don't know why people are just like negating it. The fact that maybe give this kind of name. Is there one time Bertrand Russell asked that, is there any true statement that no rational mind can doubt? Can you give a kind of statement whereby it is very absolutely true in any part of this universe that no rational mind can doubt that? It's a bit difficult, and from there it leads you to skepticism. And I just fail to understand how we can't equate a skeptic to a nihilist somehow. So from there, I feel that we just need to embrace our rationality. We don't have to have such a kind of leap of faith. As in, I just don't need such kind of easy answers and solutions. Thank you.
Great answer, Mona Falsafa. Dorcas, a minute or two, because we're going into Albert Camus' work, so maybe a minute to answer.
First, let me start with Morioki's question on whether the temporary nature of life means that life is meaningless. And I disagree. No. Something being temporary or unpredictable, you not knowing when your life will end, doesn't mean that now your life becomes meaningless. Because the analogy that MJ used, you can still be significant within that short span of time that you exist. I think this is where I diverge with nihilists, because nihilists suffer from too large-scale thinking. They're always thinking about the universe. In the grand scheme of things, you are just a speck of dust. Actually, you're even less than a speck of dust that lives in a moist sphere of dust, which is the earth. The earth has water. But you're so minuscule compared to the universe. And because the nihilist consciously, continuously compares themselves to the universe, then they will feel meaningless. But I don't do that. Personally, I don't compare myself to the universe, or I don't look at myself in the grand scheme of time, that from the time existence began to the time when the universe will end, this time is so minuscule that it's meaningless. No, as per now, the way MJ said, focus on the present. You will realize you have significance. You have impact, even if it's a small circle, like members of SAS-K, I know I have significance. So that's my answer to Morioki's question. On the moderator's question, I think Soren Kierkegaard's solution is the least rational and least elegant solution, because it requires you to dull your critical thinking senses. It requires you to focus on faith, which is the suspension of rationality. So I don't endorse it, but I do endorse some of Kierkegaard's ideas, like people adopting authentic choices, not conforming. I think that really makes sense. Also, Kierkegaard says that there is a tension. There's a tension between the infinite and the finite, and there's a struggle to find meaning in an absurd world. Those are ideas I agree with, but his solution is not rational. There's no point in life where you should suspend rationality. There was a spiritualist who came to us when we were having that discussion of New Age spiritualism, and she was telling us, you atheists, your problem is you think too much. You're too rational. Yeah, stop thinking and use your emotions and your feelings. I'm like, what? You're crazy. No. There should be no point where you suspend rationality. So if somebody is giving me a solution and the first thing they are saying is stop with the rationality so that you can get this particular outcome, and even that outcome is all in the mind, This idea, you telling yourself life is meaningless, it's you. It's the perspective you've taken. You've decided that I'll be comparing myself to the universe every time and to the entire continuum of time. Yeah, so that's how you become an nihilist. I'm not in their book. I'm not boarding. I'm not boarding Soren Kierkegaard's solution. I think it is the least elegant of the three philosophers that we have so far. Nonetheless, I look forward to discussing the last philosopher, Albert Camus. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to Albert Camus' work, and it's funny because MJ and everyone is just trading towards Albert Camus' work. So most of the panelists here are talking about living your life, finding your own meaning. So it's just going back to Camus' work. And funny enough, Camus is an existentialist of the 20th century. So he's more closer to home. And Camus' work on nihilism starts from the absurd. And basically what he says is the absurd is humanity's quest for meaning clashes with the the absurd is humanity's quest for meaning, which clashes with the silent, indifferent universe. So basically, he's saying the universe doesn't care whether we think we are, let's say, important or not. Funny thing is, the absurd actually stems from our own point of view. Actually, it's humanity's own self-made problem. And what does he say about it? He says that we should overcome nihilism by defying meaninglessness. So he's saying we should defy it. And how do we defy it? We defy this by we defy this by imagining Sisyphus being happy. And a background to Sisyphus. Sisyphus was a Greek character who was punished by the gods, and basically his punishment was rolling a huge boulder to a very high mountain, and when he reaches to the top, it slides back down, so he has to go back down and get it. So Albert Camus is telling us we should embrace the struggle as victory. We should defy meaninglessness. How do we do this? Through freedom and passion, and living fully despite the futility that life seems to offer. He also goes in to say that we should have solidarity and we should rebel. And his rebellion is not about, let's say, tearing down institutions. No, his rebellion is against injustices in the world, because most existential philosophers find injustices. And if you look at most of them, they're social justice warriors. So that's a topic for another day. But what does Camus say? Camus offers a revolt against meaninglessness. And for Camus, in relation to Kierkegaard, it requires no leap beyond the absurd. So we do not have to transcend to a higher being or an external being. Camus' solution is immanent, earthly, and what he proposes is rebellion, simply, through defiant joy. We should just find freedom and passion, live live as if there is no tomorrow. But if I may pose a question, does this recklessness really, um, does this rebellion really gives us a way out of nihilism, or does it bring more problems? Because Camus' proposition is like we have an inescapable reality. So all we can do is just rebel. So let me put it to you guys. What do you think about Camus' proposition? Luchevelele, I can see your hand up, but let's start with MJ. And then Luchevelele, you can answer.
Live as if there's no tomorrow. No, I think we should live as if there's tomorrow, because literally, if you live as if there's no tomorrow, that's the very definition of nihilism, because it's living like tomorrow doesn't matter. But maybe I'm taking it out of context. Some people think when you live as if there's no tomorrow means you do your best today. For me, I think if you live as if there's no tomorrow, you're not going to save, you're not going to treat people nicely because it doesn't matter anyway. You're not going to do anything that builds up to a better tomorrow. So live as if there exists tomorrow. And there's two kinds of tomorrow. There's tomorrow that you live as if you'll be there tomorrow. So you save so that you can have a better future, you build better relationship with people around you. You do everything to make the tomorrow that you're going to live in a better than the today you're living in. Number two, there's a tomorrow that you know for sure you'll not be living in. But then why does it matter? And this now comes to, I don't know how to frame this. You see, like, do you want to Africa? Like, it's most likely that we are not going to see Africa emerge as a superpower in our lifetime. All of us here, probably not in the next 50 years. You can never tell. China was there 30 years ago. China was like Africa, but it will take a miracle. So it's unlikely that. So what is our interest in trying to make Kenya and Africa a better country than it is today? If the better country that we foresee, an Africa that plays in global politics, we are sure we are not going to be part of it. It is the, I don't know how to put it, it is the fact that if you think it's the same thing that makes you an African feel very bad that your fellow Africans were enslaved 500 years ago. You have no idea how they looked. You don't know them. You have known, but you feel this connection with that meaning. You feel like they should have fought back and made, the Africans. That connection you have with those people 500 years ago is the connection you should think of now that you're living, that people will have with you 500 years from now or 200 years from now. So it is that future that you should all fight for. So yeah, you should live as if tomorrow matters. Both the tomorrow that you are going to experience, most likely experience, because it's not guaranteed, and the tomorrow that you know guaranteed. And finally, I don't know how, when I joined halfway and someone was talking about tomorrow relativism. Of course, I have always asked someone to give me anything that they think is morally objective. Everything is subjective, in my own opinion. Every moral question is subjective. You can make a good case for it, and you can make everything is subjective. It's like instance. It depends with the observer. It's the relativity. Every moral question depends with the observer. Where are you observing from? If it could be moving at a speed of light. It is a relative. Morality is a relative question, absolutely, and that's not an absolute statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. Well, this Camus debate is a bit closer to home, because actually it directly conflicts with our contemporary issues. So Luchevelele, you can go ahead, and then Deve will come next. Luchevelele, briefly.
Okay. Just a little joke on what MJ had said. Just a little to say that the statement that there's nothing objective, like everything is relative. But do you mean the statement itself is objective? Okay, as you think about that, now just to, in as much as the last time you told me not to respond on some, but I just let me respond to this so that I can respond to your question. I think there's a narrative Dorcas had talked about in which that was about Nietzsche, about his state, his syphilis, had something to do with the coping he had. But that's usually a fallacy that most people usually want to use, but it's not actually true because he had finished publishing all his works before he got ill, so it doesn't really count anyway. So yeah, it's not that he was sick in the mind because of the syphilis, because even if you have syphilis in the mind, you can't really even write. You're really delirious and you can't even hold a pen to even have logical thoughts. So it doesn't really count as to why he came up with those Nietzschean solutions of the overman and so on and so on. So not really. And now, it's interesting that you're still talking about relativity, objectivity, and all those, which still tells you that it's still related to nihilism, because whether it's epistemological nihilism, whether it's moral nihilism, it still counts, and it still shows you how relevant, how wide nihilism is, so that you can tell you that, yeah, in as much as we and it's true, we don't have something really objective. Everything else we know is subjective based on our personal values or our culture, and everything shaped. Everything is relative. So it still brings you to something known as moral subjectivity. So this still says that everything we know about morality, it's shaped by our personal or cultural views, but there's nothing objective about it. And still brings us back to moral nihilism, which again still tells you that we don't have any objective moral values. Everything we have are just made. And now this now brings us back to someone like Albert Camus, where he was talking about the absurd, which, yes, it is a conflict between the universe being cold, being meaningless, and you still trying to have this urge that you must find some meaning. So that's the absurd. So in his solution that he was giving, it was, yes, you should embrace the absurd, you should reject anything. And he was actually indirectly criticizing Kierkegaard's way of surrendering to faith, because he actually described it as, it is actually philosophical death. Just as Dorcas had talked about, surrendering your common sense or something of the sort, your critical thinking, surrendering all. And that's what Camus identified and termed it as its philosophical suicide. Just in as much as he was warning against the actual suicide, in which you're actually confirming that life is unlivable because there's no meaning to it. By you killing yourself, you're actually admitting to that, in as much as it's still meaningless anyway. But if you still commit yourself to religion, you're actually doing the same thing, but philosophically, because you're killing your critical thinking, you're killing your common sense, you're killing your logic by surrendering to something like a god, you see. So he was actually criticizing it. He termed it as philosophical suicide. So he gave his own solution, in which, you should embrace the absurd, live life. Life is worthwhile. Don't bother yourself in finding meaning, because it doesn't make sense in the end. In as much as he pointed out nihilism, he's not a nihilist. He's an existentialist. You can actually term him as a secular existentialist. But to me, that's a rational solution towards it. In as much as you're still free to kill yourself, but you'll only be admitting that, yes, life is unlivable anyway. There's no meaning. You're succumbing to despair. And alternatively, you can also surrender yourself to God, to crystals, to horoscopes, astrology, everything. This supernatural stuff. You'll be killing your common sense. That's philosophical suicide. So I think Camus' solution actually makes sense to me as an atheist, as a critical thinker. I think, yeah, and actually that's why I can actually term myself as an absurdist. But yes, I actually acknowledge nihilist, in as much as I may pass off to some as a nihilist, which I still wouldn't find, because maybe I am. So yeah.
Thank you, Luchaveleli. Hello. Dorcas, you have something, and then I'll take over again.
Okay, I wanted, first of all, to clarify my position. Luchaveleli, please do not misquote me. I did not say that Friedrich Nietzsche came up with his philosophical ideas, especially that one on the love of suffering, after getting dementia. No. He got dementia in 1889, after he had already written his works, his philosophical works. But when he was writing those works, Friedrich Nietzsche was undergoing a lot of pain. In his early life, he used to have severe migraine. and other unspecified illnesses. Then when he became a volunteer in the Franco-Prussian War in the 1870s, he contracted diphtheria, and what was the other disease? Some other disease that he contracted, and even that one had profound discomfort in his life. That was the time when he wrote these ideas, these philosophical ideas. So his suffering impacted that notion of what was it? Amor fat. It impacted it. I'm not saying that this is related to the dementia. No. There, I've not gotten to that bit yet. But his suffering, his pain, anguish, that definitely informed his philosophical perspective. Now, this aspect put forward by Albert Camus is very interesting. I think absurdists acknowledge the fact that there is attention. There is absurdity in the world because there is no inherent, meaning that we live in a universe which is uncaring and cold. It doesn't care about us. Conversely, human beings are always seeking clarity and purpose. We want something definite. We want order. Yeah. But according to Albert Camus, that isn't the case because the world is cold, it's indifferent, and it is orderless. So we have that absurdity that we are confronted with, and his solution was to rebel against this absurdity. Yeah, that you accept that tension and live in spite of it. That's why he gave the example of the myth of Sisyphus and how that process of looking for meaning is like pushing the boulder up the hill and it coming back down. It's just pointless, according to him, but nonetheless, you must find joy in it, and you must refrain from committing both types of suicide, the physical suicide or the philosophical suicide, which is adopting philosophical ideas like religion and communism, or in other words, conforming, yeah, or the physical one, which is taking your own life. So he told us not to go for either of those, that we need to just be content with that middle ground, that struggle of trying to find meaning. But we need to accept the fact that you never really come to a nice, clear solution from it. So that's his perspective. But as I said, I disagree fundamentally with the concept of life not having meaning, simply because it was not assigned objectively. It was not assigned by a universe, by a God, or some all-seeing, overseeing entity. Then now that there's no meaning, it's kind of like you saying, because beauty is subjective, because there's no standard, there's no universal standard of beauty, then beauty doesn't exist. You see, that's an error in judgment or an error in thinking. It's the same thing with all of these people who start with the nihilistic point of view. They assume simply because there's no overarching meaning in life, in the universe, that because it's not objective, because it's subjective, then it's not there, that there is no meaning there. Now I disagree with all these guys. But since we are almost out of time, let me stop there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dorcas. Deve, you have something?
Yes, Nikki, thank you. Now, Albert Camus, I disagree. Not that I disagree with him. I'm just saying that what he said, to imagine Sisyphus happy, humanity, the animals, everything, they have been doing Sisyphus. Whether they are laughing all the way up with the border or not, they've all life on earth, as far as we know, we don't know about life. They do Sisyphus every day until they die. So Albert Camus' philosophy is we should not think too much of which the Neanderthals did the Sisyphus thing. I don't know. I'm sure the Neanderthals laughed. They were even happy. Hey guys, you have been happy at one point or another. Were you aware you are pushing your boulder? No, you weren't aware. It's only that Camus put it into words. What we do, they just put it in word. A question. You put it in words. So we push this border every day, and sometimes we're even happy in life. So should we stop thinking? Or should we start, should we stop thinking? Should we stop imagining a better life? We should, but we should also be aware that it is what it is. Can we make it better? Can we make life a bit better for our neighbor, for myself, for you? Sure. Can we get together and be happy of a glass of wine or of a bottle of water? Sure. But the boulder, every life is pushing that boulder. So yeah, so it was good that Albert Camus put it in words for us to be able to talk about and to realize that life has been a giraffe out there is doing the same thing and gets eaten by the lion. That's the end of the boulder for the giraffe. What was the giraffe's purpose for life? Produce other giraffes, eat the grass, and put manure on the plains. It did that. Was that the purpose? I don't know. But Albert Camus did not tell us the purpose. What was the purpose of the boulder? What was our purpose here? So yeah, a good discussion, but I will stay away from philosophy because I really, yeah, I will stay away from philosophy. But it's nice. Thank you.
Well, Deve, as as a practicing philosopher, all I could say is philosophy actually is just, the definition is just inquiry into basically anything. So you staying away from philosophy actually is impossible because it means you stop inquiring about anything. So actually, people practice philosophy. It's just that the academic or the scholarly work makes it look like it's a strenuous physical exercise, but it's not. Moving on, MJ, I'd like to get your response, and then Lucheveleli, and then in briefly in 2 minutes, and then we'll have closing remarks. Yeah.
Someone asked me if that statement was objective. I literally said everything I say is subjective. And one of the evidence of subjectivity is the fact that he understood it different from what I meant it. So that means we are two observers observing or hearing the same thing, but from two different perspectives. The other thing I just want to say is on philosophy. I am a good student of philosophy. I consider myself, well, I could be exaggerating, but I don't like the way philosophers like to be technical. It's always about Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, according to Plato, according to, it's I don't find technical. By student of thought, I mean people who actually study philosophy or speak philosophy. I find them too technical, just like lawyers. The inability to explain concepts in a simple, in a manner that anybody will understand. So they tell you this concept and then they like the Cheveledi is using a technicality to explain a technicality and then now gives you a technical using a technicality
Yes.
to, sorry, David.
Oops.
So it's that's normally I have, and this is not unique to this platform. I've listened to most of them online. They're always like struggling. There's always a technicality of a technicality. I think we should find simple words to explain very simple, basic, in a way that they resonate to everyday life. Yeah, but that was good. I thought I joined late, but that was really good.
Well, as uh, as um, as one of the members of the philosophical class of SAS-K, I'd like to apologize for the technicalities, but going on forward, actually, you should be more prepared for more technicalities because, I mean, philosophy is a hard read, so being simple is not an option. I'm sorry, even if you ask Luce Veleli, he'll tell you being simple in philosophy is quite hard. But we'll try to simplify it.
Is
Our
philosophy not
only
about life?
it is, but our only the issue
It's
is
simple.
we don't have
Like,
yeah. So the issue is we don't have a broadly we don't have a broad or standard African philosophy from which our African point of view could be, let's say, could be examined because all we read about is Western philosophy, and they like to be technical. So we'll
no,
try,
but
but
it's also about the words. Like Cheveledi, do you have to explain nihilism using word moral relativity? And then when you try to explain yourself on that, you use existentialism. Then it's now a build-up of 50 words that I have to go look for definitions. No.
well, Boris, it's the problem is it's if I may give you an example, it's like learning chemistry, it's like learning bonds in ionization, and then you come to learn in Form 3 or Form 4 there that you have to deal with double bonds and what have you. So, I mean, we'll see if there's a way. The philosophers of this group will see if there's a way we could be able to simplify terms. So we that point is well taken, and we'll look at it. So Luceveleli.
I think about that. I think Morris said that he joined late. So I'm wondering when did he hear me define nihilism? And that was why which I started to define it. And he wasn't around. And I think if there's anything technical I said about it, I think he can actually just ask and then I can clarify. But all in all, when I saw the banner, you see, it talks about people like Nietzsche, people like Kierkegaard, people like, Albert Camus. So first of all, if you want, it's actually about preparing. So, if something is talking about nihilism, of course, it's common sense. You'll have to go and understand what it means and the various forms, everything around it. You see, like that's my approach. So it's not that when I'm well prepared, I'm too technical, unless because I'll ask you which technical
I'm not
term did I
asking
use
for
that you didn't
myself, I'm
understand.
asking for the audience. I'm not asking for myself. I
Yeah.
understand
So
for the
yeah.
audience.
So it's just a simple question, just a simple question. If there's anything technical, someone is free to ask which technical term I use because we are actually talking about nihilism. So what's technical about nihilism? What that I defined. So anyway, I was also talking about I was led to respond to Muriuki's question about mortality. If the fact that it's not guaranteed, so is everything worth it? And this is also in resonance to something which Mwana Falsafa had actually asked before, which about teleological arguments and deontological arguments. So it all depends on which school of thought you are. It's common sense that if you're a nihilist, if you are a staunch nihilist, you are actually going for the ends justify the means because you'll die. So whatever you're doing doesn't make any sense because the outcome is known, the end game is known. Now, that's one approach. You can actually decide to be a deontological person who is duty oriented, who is, it's the Watwell, something which MJ had talked about. Like, life is all about the experience, having fun while at it. Because yes, at the end, we know you will die. It's all meaningless, but have fun while at it. So you see, that's a different approach. But you shouldn't just act surprised if someone took a different perspective, because all in all, this is philosophy. There's no right or wrong answers. It's all about, in inquiry, just as Nick had talked about. That's the beauty of it. It's actually talking about thinking. And you were actually talking about, do we have African philosophy? Yes, we do. This is something, but I can appreciate the fact that yes, in academic philosophy, most of the time, even Eastern philosophy, most of the time it's shunned upon. African philosophy is totally ignored, and we are only fed Western philosophy, the Greek stuff, and those thinkers, German, whatever thinkers. But when you look at things, life objectively, it doesn't really mean that while we had people thinking all over Europe, it's not that we didn't have thinkers in Africa. We actually did. It's not that, it's only that they never documented it. And the person who writes history is the one who actually won it. So history is written by victors. So if you never had a chance, that's how you die with your own things and your old tradition stuff, because you won't record it. So when it comes to the Eastern philosophy, there's actually Eastern philosophy as well, and it's also on the rise as well. So it's not that we didn't have thinking over these places. It's only that, how biased Western education is. But we actually had even things like Ubuntu, that's African philosophy, the spirit of unity and all that, working together. It's nothing Western about it. But someone will tell you communism, it was an idea. We had white thinkers in the West that had to give you the concept of communism. In African traditional societies, we never had a word for it. But yeah, people actually acted as a community and in unison and everything, even child rearing. So, but that's beside the point anyway. So yeah, but yeah, it's been actually a great discussion. So yeah, I've actually enjoyed it, and it's been worthwhile.
Okay, thanks, Dorcas. And then we'll go to Murioki.
Okay. This entire discussion is very elitist. In as much as today I said I wear many hats, today I'm wearing my philosophical hat, and I consider myself to be a philosopher. Yeah, why not?
Great. At least.
Yeah, there's a shortage of female philosophers, by the way, not just in Kenya, but worldwide.
Exactly, Dorcas, exactly.
Imagine. But generally speaking, philosophy, existential issues are very elitist. Why do I say this? There's a documentary, or rather a YouTube channel of these guys, these white guys, who go to uncontacted tribes or low contacted tribes around the world. They went to Tanzania among a group of, let's say, they live in the forest, maybe bushmen, you can call them bushmen, and women, and they would live with them for days. Then they would ask them existential questions. And all those uncontacted tribes had very simple answers. They're like, the meaning of life, I care about hunting game meat. Like those guys were hunters. They would look for wildlife and all, how they trap the tortoise and all that. So they were just concerned with survival. When you are concerned with survival, you don't think about existential issues. Yeah, more often than not. But when you've already taken care of the basic needs, now you start to think, hey, what is the purpose of life? Hey, what if I consider this solution to my existential crisis? So it is indeed elitist, I agree, but it is also important to have such discussions because they change when you become an atheist. Another observation I have made throughout this discussion is we focused on three philosophers who were overcoming nihilism. That is to assume that nihilism is inherently problematic. And I agree. I think the default setting, if you leave nihilism as it is, if you assume that everything is meaningless, then you will have all the problems that I had mentioned. earlier, including despair, depression, suicidal thoughts, lack of motivation, apathy, indifference, hedonism, and not trusting institutions, even though we say that has utility now, and some social disruption. Some of those things have positive aspects, but for the most part, if it's just left at that, then there will be problems, especially with your mental health. So I think the moderator was spot on in looking at these philosophers who were trying to overcome nihilism. I'm not a supporter of the philosophy, even though I empathize with some tenets of it. Nothing is completely wrong in philosophy, but you can find that something is mostly wrong. Yeah. So in my view as Dorcas, not other people, my view as Dorcas, I think there are many problems with nihilism, and that's why we need to overcome it. And of the three philosophers that we've discussed, I lean strongly towards Friedrich Nietzsche's solutions rather than the other two philosophers. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for the great work that you have done, and to all the people that have turned out. It's such a delight to see some lost faces among us, including NJ. Yes.
Thank you so
Back
much,
to you, Nikki.
Dorcas. Thank you so much, Dorcas. Appreciated. Muriuki, comments?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I hear what Dorcas is saying here, but for me, what I'll say, like when I think of Hitler and I think of nihilism, it makes sense. Hitler, okay, in the end, he was destroyed, but he caused so much damage, making life. I get a peace of mind when I hear life is meaningless. I think of Hitler, Stalin, and me. It makes sense. And I think of these things that are dinosaurs went extinct. The animals go extinct, which means that now they came to this world, and they are no more. That makes life meaningless. There are no more dinosaurs, no more mammoths. So that makes life meaningless. Because you're here for a while, then you vanish from the earth forever. There'll never be any more dinosaurs. So that makes it, to me, meaningless. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Muriuki. But if I may, Muriuki, you might be misled because actually Nietzsche's work was used. Actually, it was misinterpreted by the Nazis to justify the Nazi rule in Germany. So funny thing is actually Nietzsche's solutions actually were misinterpreted and were misused because as you know, the German Nazi-led war. So maybe if you could read more about it, you could see the relation. But yeah, MJ, last comments before I give my final remarks.
No, I just wanted to caution people against Nietzsche. Nietzsche I've read two of his books and heard about most of his book. He's a very good writer, prolific, but he literally wrote the manifesto for the Nazis. That's all I would say. He literally wrote, and it was worse. They did not even practice all of it because he was also anti-what? What do you call, like Dorcas is a feminist. People who are anti that. He's a misogynist proper. So he's a very good writer, prolific. Some of his ideas are very brilliant, but he literally wrote them. Whatever he wrote, as much as it was some decades, if not a century before the Nazis, it's exactly what the Nazis used. And he really looks down on women. So we must quote always these philosophers in context, not just godizing them when they have both sides. You cannot just choose one side. But thanks. Stanley ex-pastor Stanley said there will be a second session. I don't know if that's still on, but anyway, an offline one.
Okay. Mwana falsafa, last comments.
Okay, so as someone who has been someone influenced by a concept known as holism, I believe that in the whole, the whole is real and the real is whole. So that in the part you can find in the part you cannot find the whole, but in the whole you can find the part. So any meaning that is not universal, I just find it weird. You can't just say that the best way how to cook chapati, the fact that you're cooking good chapati is you are now the best cook, or that's how people are supposed to cook it. If there's no universal way on how to cook chapati, then I can't attach any significance to that. So my point is that I must continue my skeptical inquiry, and through that it requires me somehow not to attain to some kind of so in general, I'm in support of nihilism, not in a bad way, but somehow to create my own meaning. But I understand that my meaning is not that huge when compared with the whole. When compared with the whole, as in a universal purpose, something like a big purpose in this universe. Thank you. It's a good discussion.
Okay, Luchaveleli, before I make my final remarks.
Yes.
And I know,
Okay.
I know you want to respond. I know who you want to respond to. I know what you want to respond to.
But
So,
I'll
keep it
be
short.
as brief as possible. Yeah, I'll keep it short.
Okay.
Bit short.
Okay.
It's like saying, we had Mao Zedong and his great leap forward, right? He was pro communism, right? And the person who came with communism, who came with the concept and wrote about it, was Karl Marx. He was just a philosopher, and this was way before those artificial famines, those tactics those dictators were using, to bring revolution. So it's like saying that because we had the great leap forward and we had 30 million starving to death by Mao Zedong, now we blame Karl Marx for it. It's like saying because we had Nazis, now let's blame Nietzsche for it. The Nazis were a different breed. You know, when you actually read about the history of Nazism, you will see that we had cultists in there, people who were actually irrational to begin with, people who are into esotericism. So of course they will misinterpret Nietzschean solutions. And I told you that, I think that was before MJ had joined. We were talking about how, for instance, it's a coincidence that evolution works in tandem with his logic of amor fati. Like when something undergoes some challenges or suffering, there's a likelihood of becoming something better or greater. But yes, take it with a grain of salt. Don't apply the whole for everything, right? But just because it applies to that, now this Nazi guy were actually using it to reinforce their racial ideas, to the superior race ideology. Their eugenics, because they want the superior race, so they must breed a German with a German. They shouldn't interbreed, and so on and so on. So we shouldn't blame Nietzsche for it, because he actually gave his solution philosophically, but these were people who took it out of context. So Nietzsche is actually innocent, but but about his misogyny, yeah, he was a misogynist. There's that, but yeah. So yeah.
Thank you, Luchaveleli. If I may add to that, actually, I wanted to make. I had already made the point to Murioki, but it's fine to reiterate. As Luchaveleli had said, it's a known fact that Nietzsche's work was misinterpreted by the Nazis to fit their own agenda, because they, Nietzsche's the notion of destroying, rejecting all values and self-creating actually is in line with what the Nazis and what Hitler actually asked the Nazi Germany to do at the time. So it's not, and actually, for context, actually, it was his sister who actually it was Nietzsche's sister who actually took over his works and distributed them, gave power for editing and what have you. So it was actually not Nietzsche's fault to begin with. Moving on, I think this was a great discussion. Actually, it has opened our eyes to different ideologies. One thing I could say that I've noticed from this discussion is I think we have a predisposed notion of philosophy as being too technical and too mentally or intellectually straining, which it could be, but is not. It's not necessarily. If you know and if you prepare well, it won't be such a hard topic. My final remarks could be that in the whole context of nihilism, we find that nature proposes us to create meaning through will. Kierkegaard, on the other hand, proposes us to find meaning through faith, and Camus asks us to define meaningless through persistent passion and freedom. So those are the three options. So you might want to look at those three options broadly and decide. Based on this discussion, what I could ask those who prepare the discussion topics and what have you. I think next discussion, or because we are talking about teleological and deontological aspects, I think next we should focus on the critique of reason, more specifically the work of Immanuel Kant, because I think from nihilism, if we can go into Immanuel Kant's work, it would harmonize a lot of things. But it's just an idea. It's I'll leave it to the leaders to discuss, and let's say what we'll see what they'll come up with, and I'll be happy to moderate if needed. Thank you for turning up. Thank you for those who showed up for the discussion. It was personally, as a philosopher, this is one of my best meetings I've come to, because I mean it's right under my alley. So thank you so much. I think I'll leave to Dorcas to give us the way forward. I have greatly enjoyed being a moderator, and I hope next time to see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator, and your suggestion on a future philosophical topic has been noted. It will be added to the list. We can look at Immanuel Kant, and we can look at the general school of thought under which Kantian ethics falls, which is it deontology? I believe it is.
No. It's actually it's the critique of reasoning. The critique of reason. That one is actually a direct attack to atheistic world point of view. So, and it draws from the nihilism that the doubt and everything that atheists face, or yeah. So Immanuel Kant's critique of reasoning is a direct.
Okay. I'm worried about the meeting cutting off. So we'll talk about it. Like I'll side chat you so that you can explain it to me nicely how we can phrase it, but we'll include it in the list the way you want it. But of course, in the future, first we'll have we already have topics for this coming month. We already have 4 topics for the 4 weeks. So we are going to share them probably this weekend, probably tomorrow. And then we'll add this one that you have in mind, the critique of reason, and Immanuel Kant specifically as the 5th one. But thank you so much. Thank you, everybody that came. There was Chillwave, there was Lucia Beleli, did very good contributions. Mwana Falsafa, it was good to see you. Yes, philosophy is part of your name. So it was great to hear your views. Thank you, Ndebe. Thank you, Morioki, for your question. It was good to see you, Stephen and Anne, although you guys were passive. Thank you. Any other person that was, I see El Maestro was also here, that's silently following. And any other person that contributed. I think Chillwave was among us as well. I wish you guys a good night. We will meet next week for a very chill topic. This one was deep, that one is a bit chill. you can make a contribution even if you didn't research in that coming one. So yeah, see you guys then. Good night.
Good night, everyone.